Hello and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new, I am Robin and this is a book channel that likes to celebrate primarily queer books, but we do talk about other books on the occasion as well. And today we will be reviewing Godkiller by the debut author Hannah Kaner. This is my Illumicrate edition, so it's very pretty. This is the first book in the series. It is a fantasy book. It was published around the 19th of January, I imagine. I think it's around that time. So a very hot off the press, very new book. This book has queer and disability representation. So without further ado, I think let's just get into talking about it because I very much enjoyed this book. So a little bit of context before I get into the plot of the book. This book is set after the Great War against gods, which led the king banning gods and praying to gods in the town of Midrin, which is where all these characters are currently residing. The book follows four main characters. We have, we have Kissin here, which is my favourite character out of the entire book. I love Kissin so much. I am a Kissin stan until I die. We have Elagast, we have Inara, and we have, oh gosh, I'm gonna attempt to say his name once and then I will never say it again. So then we have Skidai, who is this little god monster up here. Now my camera will stop clicking to itself. It's good to have a picture for the reference, and I really enjoy having like reference pictures for it. So Kissin, who I would say arguably is kind of the main character of the book, is a god slayer. So she kills gods that sort of step out of line, and she got into this job after her whole family was murdered by a bunch of power-hungry worshippers who were going to sacrifice her and her family to gods to get more power, basically. So now she hunts gods that step out of line and begin to ask too much of humans. Anything that ends in sacrifice or like blood sacrifices or anything like that. Once gods start to get hungry for that, that's when she goes and sorts the problem out. Then we have Elagast, who is called Elo through the most of the book, so I will probably be referring to him as Elo. He is an ex-knight who fought in this war against gods. He is now a baker, and a very good baker at that, but he's still very good friends with the king, and this will become to play later on in the plot. And then we have Inara, who is just a kid. She is a newly orphaned child after her wealthy and powerful and influential mother ends up being murdered and her entire family house is burned to the ground. She is also connected to Skedi. They have a bond that if like one of them dies, the other one dies sort of thing. It's a very powerful bond, and they're on a mission to try and break this bond so they can both have lives away from each other. There is some major hints that she could be a demigod because she can break God's will and stuff like that, which no human can do. So it is sort of hinted at that she's a demigod, so I'm very excited to see that storyline in the next couple of books come through. She can also see people's emotions in colours, so if someone is like super angry, she can see like a red aura around them and stuff like that, so she can see people's emotions. And then we had Skediath, who is the god of white lies. He's quite an interesting character because he doesn't remember anything of his past, so we don't get any backstory. His memories are wiped and he has no idea who he is, why he is like that, why he's attached himself to Inara. He's very close to Inara, and it's quite unusual for gods to be seen as like close to people, but he's very close and he wants the best for the both of them. So what is the plot of the book? Now I've introduced you to the four characters. Inara finds Kissin after Kissin is in town, has slayed a god nearby, and Inara thinks to break this bond that her and Skediath have, that she needs to talk to somebody with some information, with some sort of knowledge about gods, and she thinks that talking to her will be the best option for her. Kissin goes to like kill the god and then is like, oh actually maybe like it might, if you're bonded then we might kill the both of you, but we do have to go home and talk to your parents because it's very late and we should take you home first. And so they both go home to find that Inara's house is up in flames and everybody who was in the house, which is including her mother, has died, and anyone who tried to escape got shot on the way out. And it wasn't good for Inara to see at this age. I think it's definitely something that's going to stay with her for the rest of her life. A lot of therapy might be needed to sort of undo all of that one, I think. From there, Kissin sort of vows to protect Inara. She knows what it's like to be without a family and to be a child on your own in these times. And so she sort of takes Inara under her wing and she goes home and tells everyone that she's associated with her home and says like, okay, we gotta break this kid and this god apart. where do we go and do that? And they suggest that going to the broken city of Belden, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, this is where the War on Gods happened. It's a desolate place, nobody lives there anymore apart from very, very powerful gods. It's a suggestion that they go there and talk to a very powerful god to basically ask them how to split them both apart. So that is how they end up on their journey on the way there. On the way they bump into Elo, who is on the way to Beldren. He was going there to sacrifice himself to save the king. You told this very early on in the book, this is not a spoiler. Basically the king saved Elo's life during the War on Gods and has now come back for his payment of that and just said, hey, well, I've done it for you, you can do it for me now. So Elo is on his way to there to basically sacrifice himself to a god to get the king to live a lot longer so he can rule a lot longer. Due to some unfortunate mishaps, they end up staying together and thinking that staying as a team will be beneficial because getting there is a dangerous journey, and so that is what they do. They stick as a team and then we follow them through this journey and then following them to Beldren, and we get to see what happens there, which is the basic plot, the very basic plot of the story. This book was super interesting and it was a surprisingly short one. It's actually is just under 300 pages, it's around 280 pages long. So this was a very, very quick read for me actually. And usually with fantasy books, like you think of fantasy books, you think of Cryer's War, you think of how thick that is, you think of Samantha Shannon. It can't be a fantasy book unless there's a lot of backstory. Hannah Kana really brings the world building to this book in a really surprising way. It's really submersive and it's amazing how well she builds all these rules, all the life, you know, the backstories in such a short amount of time. I think it's really fantastic the way she did that. If a god has been given an offering, it gets bigger, and like gods that have been forgotten about or left to die get smaller, and during this they stumble across gods who are tiny and like are just desperate for just an offering to continue to living. And there's gods such as Skedith who multiple times through this gets an offering by accident and he ends up growing huge. It's really, really interesting. I think that like the rules that are in this are really interesting. I really, really enjoyed this element to it as well. This plot does actually remind me quite a bit of American Gods, which was like an Amazon show back in the day that basically has like the plot line of old gods who are trying to find a way to get people to worship them again because the new gods are taking all the worship and the old gods are dying off. Sort of remind me of that. The gods in this universe are shown as greedy and power hungry. These gods will start off asking for small gifts like coins or sweets or bread or just like a little bit of something, and then obviously the more power that they want, the bigger the sacrifice gets. That's how we get the power hungry worshippers who really want power and who end up making blood sacrifices, as in like chopping off their own limbs and sacrificing that, burning down houses full of families as a sacrifice for gods, and that's how we ended up getting to the War of Gods. I also really, really liked the world building, especially like the world building between Midran and Beldren, and just how starkly different it is. I really liked how like the bubbling city, like you got a lot of what the city feels like or what it's like to be in there. Then when you look at Beldren, of how deserted it is and these gods that walk about, the descriptions are out of this world. I genuinely think it's some of like the best fantasy writing I've read, and especially from a debut author, I think that this is kind of incredible. I do have to say we don't get a lot of history in these books, but because this is going to be part of a series, I assume that we're going to get a lot more history in that. I really hope we get the prequel of the War on Gods because I really want to know what happened. I want to know like how it escalated that far. We know the highlights of the story, but I think writing during that period would be a really fantastic book, and I'm very excited to see if that ever happens. But I'm very excited because this does end on a cliffhanger, so I will be very excited to read the second book when that comes out. But yeah, I really want to see how the city ends up becoming like that, how Beldren becomes a dead zone and how like the gods live there. I think that is also one of my downsides. I did just want a lot of more backstory. Although so much has been done in almost like 300 pages, I just wanted more. And I don't know if that's because I'm used to reading quite chunky fantasies, that I'm used to knowing every single detail. It's left me hungry for more, which is good. on Hanakaina's side because I will obviously be buying the second book, but it's not good for my side because I have to wait another 2 years now, or however long it takes to write a book. The characters in this book are super likable. I loved every single one of the characters. Kissing is my favourite. She's a pansexual queen. I'm obsessed with her. I love her, and I love a woman with a big sword, alright? I love a woman with a big sword. That's why I now have like a Gideon tattoo. She's a very complex character and she's full of trauma and heartbreak, but she still wants the best for everything. She takes care of Nara throughout the entire journey, and she ends up becoming like this mother figure to her, and it ends up becoming quite like a found family between these three trope. I think it's really, really lovely, and I really love how they all interact with each other. I think that was done really, really well. Elo is a lovely character as well. He's like little soft baby. He's very naive, he's very lovable, he just has the best intentions for everybody, and he's just a little baby, alright? He's just a little baby, and he's a baker, so like what else can you say? Like he's a baby baker. He's just adorable. I love him. I don't usually like male characters, but here I am liking a male character. He was great. I loved him. To wrap it all up, for a debut author, I have to give it to Hanakaina that this is just incredible to read, and I just have to give them the biggest props ever. The amount of skill and detail that goes into writing a fantasy book, and to not just make it readable but to make it believable, is insane, and she pulls this off so well. I fell in love with the setting, I fell in love with the characters, I fell in love with the storyline. I really enjoyed this read. Everything made sense. It was just fantastic. I did give it 4.5 stars, and I am saying this is like, I know I just talked about how amazing this book was for 10 minutes. I think the only thing I wanted was a little bit more. I wanted a bit more backstory. I just wanted to know a little bit more, but again, I am used to reading. I like Samantha Shannon is one of my favourite authors. Priory of the Orange Tree is one of my favourite books. There was also a couple times during this book, because they do travel a lot, that it would just say like they travelled for 3 days and we wouldn't get that time. I am glad that we don't have a lot of just talk that doesn't need to be there, you know, like just making chapters just to make chapters and to make it boring. I am glad of that, and you can tell that, you know, it's been slimmed down to the best bits of the book. But I think we do also then miss having these interactions with these characters, or even just like an extra, I don't know. I don't know what I wanted. I just wanted to have more interaction between these characters because I just love them. I love these characters. And yeah, I wanted to know a lot more about the War on Gods as well, because I think that's very interesting. We will get to know more as the books carry on. But yeah, for my first taste, I was ready to eat the whole burger, alright? I know that some fantasy books or sci-fi books can be really hard to digest. So I know quite a few people that don't like the fantasy genre, but I definitely think that this was such an easy read, and it wasn't overcomplicated. Like, I knew what was going on. So if you are scared of books like The Priory and Gideon and all those popular names, then I think that this book is a very good starter if you want to get into the fantasy genre, or if you fancy trying the fantasy genre, because yeah, it was nice, simple, easy, and it is a very short book as well. You're not losing out anything if you don't like it, but yeah, I would definitely recommend this book. I really enjoyed my time with it, and I'm very excited to see any future work from Hanakaina, and I'm excited to read the future books that go with this. And yeah, it was a highly anticipated book, and for a good reason. I really enjoyed this book. What do you think about this book? Have you read it? Are you excited to read it? Are you nervous to read it? Please let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you like this review, like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff, and I hope you stick around for more content like this if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you later.